Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Tenyola Shubowale. Ghislaine Maxwell has been found guilty of recruiting and trafficking young girls to be sexually abused by the late American financier Jeffrey Epstein. The 60-year-old was found guilty on 5 of the 6 counts she faced, including the most serious charge, that of sex trafficking a minor.
Are seeking to do along with our other
British socialite Ghislaine Maxwell was found guilty by a U.S. jury on 5 of 6 counts. The 60-year-old was accused of recruiting and grooming 4 teenagers for Jeffrey Epstein between 1994 and 2004. Epstein, her former boyfriend, killed himself in 2019 in a Manhattan jail cell while awaiting trial on sex abuse charges. Prosecutors said Maxwell was Epstein's partner in crime and that she knew exactly what she was doing.
A unanimous jury has found Ghislaine Maxwell guilty of one of the worst crimes imaginable, facilitating and participating in the sexual abuse of children, crimes that she committed with her longtime partner and co-conspirator, Jeffrey Epstein. The road to justice has been far too long, but today, justice has been done. I want to commend the bravery of the girls, now grown women, who stepped out of the shadows and into the courtroom.
During the trial, jurors heard emotional and graphic testimony from 4 women, 2 of whom said they were 14 when Epstein began abusing them. Maxwell's attorneys argued she was being used as a scapegoat for Epstein and tried to discredit her accusers, saying their memories had been corrupted and that they were motivated by money.
We firmly believe in Ghislaine's innocence. Obviously, we are very disappointed with the verdict. We have already started working on the appeal, and we are confident that she will be vindicated.
The verdict was reached after 5 full days of deliberation by a 12-person jury in New York. Maxwell faces up to 65 years in prison for the 5 charges. It means she could spend the rest of her life behind bars. She also faces 2 perjury counts that will be tried separately.
Our correspondent in Washington, D.C., Maria Bird, joins us now for more on this. Maria, what's next for Maxwell after this guilty verdict?
Yes, what's going to be next at this time is they're going to deliberate. The judge is going to look to see what they're going to actually charge her with. She could get up to 65 years as a result of this. And so that is going to be the next step in this process, is to figure out exactly what she will be sentenced with.
Have vowed to appeal, but how are Americans reacting to the verdict?
I think Americans are looking at this as another step forward in the process to be able to ensure that these type of heinous crimes do not occur in the future. As one of the witnesses and one of the individuals that have been abused stated, that this is giving a clear sign that just because you're wealthy, just because you have power, does not mean that these types of crimes can occur. And so I think that is what many Americans are looking at today, is that this is another step forward in ensuring the safety and security of young women, and also to know that no matter your power or your wealth, you can still be charged with these types of crimes.
We have to remember also that the legal process is not over for Maxwell. She still faces 2 perjury charges, which each carry a maximum sentence of 5 years in prison. Now, when is she likely to face those charges?
Those charges will likely be faced once the sentencing happens for this piece. And so we will see those probably in the new year, where we will see that come up. But again, as you stated before, there is potentially an appeal that her attorney is going to put in place. And so that will also play a role into whether or not or how soon the perjury charges in that case will be brought forth.
All right then, Maria, thanks for bringing us up to speed. Now, to take a look at the COVID-19 situation in the world, the number of daily new COVID-19 cases worldwide has crossed 1 million for the first time since infections were first recorded 2 years ago. According to a tally by news agency AFP, more than 7.3 million new COVID-19 cases were detected around the world. That's in the last 7 days, and that's the highest since the virus first emerged at the end of 2019. More than 85% of the new infections occurred in 2 regions worst hit by the Omicron variant, that's Europe and the United States. We're being joined by Dr. Akiala Ishaku, who is a molecular virologist, to discuss more on this. Thank you so much for joining us on the program, Doctor.
Thank you for having me, and compliment of the season.
Same to you. And now the world has been grappling with the coronavirus for 2 years now, but there's been little relief. It seems we're far from the end of this pandemic, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. With the emergence of new variants, it shows that the virus keeps mutating, considering also the vaccine equity and lack of very formidable healthcare system in developing countries. And it shows that we are actually far from it. Just this evening, we had a breaking news that there is also a new variant that has just been discovered, other than the Omicron variant, which is called the Demicron. This one has 2 spikes mutation on the spikes protein. And so it shows that these are RNA viruses, they keep mutating, and it calls for a global solidarity to end this pandemic. It calls for collaboration, it calls for global solidarity. And I think that the way to go is to actually pin down the origin of this virus. You can agree with me that we just know that the virus was discovered in China, but China has not owned up to the origin of this virus. So except we know the origin of this virus, we should be able to globally come into alliance in solidarity to fight this virus.
Well, you know, this year there was a lot of talks about vaccines and vaccines being the way out of the pandemic. Now, we have countries like Israel already juggling the idea of a 4th vaccine dose for this virus. But like you mentioned, with the emergence of new variants, how effective is this likely to be?
Yeah, this is a very new virus that it has come to stay. We are still on the studying the virus. Scientists all over the world are still on the studying the virus. It will require some time to actually understand the pathophysiology of this virus. And so just like the way we said, you know, this is one of the fastest decay I have seen in terms of progress and innovation in medical sciences, even producing vaccine in less than a year. So it shows that the world is ready to fight this pandemic, but the virus keeps changing. Now, the issue is this, the memory cells, the immune system memory for the SARS-CoV-2 virus or COVID-19 has a very short memory once one gets infected. And so there is need for us to also have a booster doses of vaccines. In fact, not only the 4th dose, it will require that as we begin to have new emergence of new variants, it will require that we have more optimized and upgraded versions of vaccine that should be able to, you know, take care of all the variants that are going to emerge. So it's not all about the 4th doses. We even have the 5th doses until there is a technology in the farm tech industry where most of these vaccine producing company will come together, bring new innovation in terms of vaccine design, and come up with a single dose vaccine that will take care of all the variants that are present and also all the variants, feature variants. Then we're not going to only stop at 4th doses, but we'll continue taking more doses of these vaccines to reduce mortality and also to reduce hospitalization.
But Dr. Ishaku, what about for continents, like for Africa, for instance, where fewer people had been vaccinated? You're saying we could possibly need 5th doses of the vaccine. What impact is this likely to have in Africa, where vaccines are not really readily available?
Absolutely. So we just need a continental agenda on this. We just need to discuss about vaccine equity. We just need to also start producing our own vaccine in-house in the continent. We need a technology transfer. I was thinking that African Union country members will come together and begin to come up with a vaccine consortium initiative to begin to invite all the brains that are from Africa that are spread all over the world to return back home because there is a pandemic on ground. And then we begin to do knowledge transfer and begin to see how we can be able to produce our vaccine in-house. Except African continents start discussing within these continental narratives and begin to change, have a paradigm shift. We still have a long way to go. So Africa needs to think inward and begin to see how we can break the cycle of vaccine inequality and begin to see how we can start producing vaccines in-house. That is the way to go for us to also have enough vaccine, not only for COVID, for future pandemics to come.
Yeah, and speaking of future pandemics, Doctor, the UN has said this will not be the last pandemic the world will see. So how can the world better prepare to tackle another crisis of this kind?
Yeah, the world will better prepare in the future if we have solidarity and collaboration. That is the way to go, and building up healthcare system that are quite robust and should be strengthened. You will agree with me that with the coming of COVID, it has actually revealed the inadequacies of our decayed health institutions and infrastructure in sub-Saharan Africa, in developing countries, and low-income countries. Except we have that, we cannot be able to move ahead. Secondly, we need to also understand the dynamics of One Health. We need to also see to how we can be able to break the transmission dynamics between human population and animal and the interplay of the environment. We critically need to understand that and also go into vaccine productions for animal species. So that is the way to go. We actually also need to see to how we can be able to come up with innovative ideas in terms of research and funding of research in emergence of emerging of diseases, understanding genomic epidemiology and how diseases and variants and strains of microbes changes due to global warming, due to interface with the environment, and due to interface with animal diseases. So that is the way to go. It calls for solidarity and it calls for collaborations.
All right then, Dr. Akiala Ishaku, thank you so much for your thoughts and time on the program.
Thank you for having me.
So other stories now, the EU says it's ready to impose further sanctions on military-ruled Myanmar over a Christmas Eve mass killing blamed on the army. In a statement, the EU's High Representative for Foreign Affairs, Joseph Borrell, also calls for an international arms embargo on Myanmar in wake of the December 24th incident. According to humanitarian agencies and the Myanmar Witness Monitoring Group, at least 35 people, including children and humanitarian workers, were killed by security forces in a village in Myanmar's conflict-torn eastern Kaya state. The victims' bodies were burned afterwards. The military has denied the claims and says it had shot and killed an unspecified number of terrorists with weapons from the opposition armed forces after they did not stop for a military check. Australia's former Parliament building was briefly set alight earlier today by protesters during a demonstration for Aboriginal independence. No one was injured in the fire, which engulfed the old Parliament House's front doors before it was put out. It follows a fortnight of protest activity at the site. Protest violence on this scale is rare in Australia, but flare-ups have become more common during the pandemic. Some of the protesters had identified themselves as part of an anti-government and sovereign citizen group. Security forces have fired tear gas at protesters trying to march towards the presidential palace in Sudan's capital. It's the 11th day of major demonstrations since an October 25th coup, which saw Abdullah Hamdok removed and then reinstated as prime minister. The demonstrators have demanded that the military play no role in government during a transition to free elections. Most bridges to Khartoum were closed, with at least 2 of them blocked by shipping containers today. According to reports, internet and mobile services have also been disrupted in Khartoum. And mourners are paying their respects to late Archbishop Desmond Tutu, whose body is now lying in state at St. George's Cathedral in Cape Town. Since Monday, the bells have rung at St. George's for 10 minutes at midday every day in Tutu's honour and memory. Memorial services have also been held in Johannesburg and Pretoria ahead of his funeral on Saturday.
In a simple pine coffin, the mortal remains of Archbishop Desmond Tutu arrived at their final resting place on Thursday. The anti-apartheid icon will lie in state at Cape Town's St. George's Cathedral for 2 days ahead of his funeral at the weekend. South Africans formed long queues outside the church from the early hours for their chance to bid farewell to the man known as Tata, or Father. The Archbishop Tutu died on Sunday, aged 90. The Nobel laureate had requested the cheapest coffin and did not want any lavish funeral expense. A requiem mass funeral service will be held on Saturday, January the 1st, where President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to deliver a eulogy. The Archbishop of Cape Town, Tano Makoba, gave details earlier today on how things will proceed for Thursday and Friday.
People will come into the cathedral and they will offer their prayers in whatever form they want to around the high altar where we have placed his coffin. And at around 5, the cathedral doors will be closed, and then we will have just a quiet compline. Compline is night prayers by some of the clerics. The Angelus will still ring at 12 midday, and then tomorrow again 9 o'clock the Arch will arrive, and he will be there lying in state, and people can come and pay their last respects to the Arch, and then after that on Saturday that will be the funeral.
The cathedral, from which Tutu served as the first black Archbishop of Cape Town, was a safe haven for anti-apartheid activists during repressive white minority rule. Tutu will be cremated and his remains interred behind the pulpit, from which he often preached against racial injustice.
In the meantime, a priest in London is remembering the Archbishop Desmond Tutu as a hero. As a boy growing up in apartheid era South Africa, Father Neil Allen Walsh said he was so fascinated by the anti-apartheid icon that his friends nicknamed him Tutu. Decades on, Walsh is now an Anglican parish priest in East London, and his love for Tutu is undiminished.
Archbishop Desmond Tutu was and always will be my hero. I grew up on the Cape Flats in the 80s and 90s, and so black role models were scarce. He was the voice crying out in the wilderness. He was saying it unequivocally to the South African apartheid government, saying it to the world, that what you are doing is a sin in the eyes of God. And I think that's why. But it's also the fact that he's human. Yeah? He would tell you that my favorite drink is rum and coke, and my favorite ice cream is rum and raisin. But so in Desmond, I could see a human and also a godly person.
And now Iran has launched a satellite carrier rocket bearing 3 research devices into space as difficult negotiations over a started nuclear deal with world powers continue in Vienna. However, it's unclear when the launch was conducted and what devices the carrier brought with it. Previous launches have drawn rebukes from the United States, which unilaterally withdrew from the nuclear deal in May 2018 and reimposed sanctions against Iran. And finally, it's 2 years into a pandemic, but the confetti must go on. That was the message in New York City's Times Square as the confetti drop was given its annual test ahead of the New Year's celebration on Wednesday night. The test is to ensure the airworthiness of the confetti that will help usher in the new year. On New Year's Eve, 3,000 pounds of confetti will be released over Times Square. However, for the second year running, organisers will host a scaled-back virtual event to comply with the pandemic.
It looks amazing. I love it. Yeah. It's amazing. What do you think, Jess?
It was New Year's resolution. Today was spectacular. We tested the confetti, and of course, the first time it was going the wrong direction, down to 34th Street. But by the second and third time, we got it perfect. It filled the sky in Times Square. People were cheering, cars were honking their horns going by, and we're ready for December 31st.
Can't wait to see the real thing. And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Tenyo Lash Shaboale. Bye for now.